He first noticed her voice before he noticed her face. It wasn't loud, it never needed to be. It carried that soft certainty of someone who'd lived long enough to mean every word she said. When she spoke, even the air seemed to pause, listening. She was standing by the window that afternoon, a folder in her hands, sunlight touching her hair like it already knew her. The light caught every shade of brown and gold, and for a second, he forgot what he'd come to say. "Were you waiting long?" she asked, turning toward him. He blinked once. "No, I just got here." The lie was small, but it sat between them like truth. He had been waiting, just not for the meeting, for her. The room was quiet except for the ticking clock and the faint hum of traffic outside. She gestured toward a chair, and he sat down, careful not to look too long. Still, he caught the trace of her perfume, something warm and clean, like cedarwood and rain. She moved with calm precision, the way people do when they've learned to guard their thoughts. He wondered what she hid behind that composure. A hint of tiredness lingered at the corner of her smile, the kind that comes from years of being strong for everyone else. "So," she said finally, "what brings you here?" Her tone was polite, professional. But her eyes, steady, deep, seemed to be searching for something more. Maybe honesty. Maybe courage. He wasn't sure he had either. "I guess I just wanted to talk," he said, instantly regretting how vague it sounded. "About work. About things." "Things," she repeated, smiling just a little. "That's quite a category." He laughed quietly, the kind that hides nerves. "Yeah. I'm not great at naming things." Her gaze softened. "You don't have to be. Sometimes silence says enough." That sentence lingered. He watched the way she brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, the way her fingers hesitated, a small, human hesitation that made her feel suddenly closer. He didn't mean to notice everything, the faint lines near her eyes, the silver thread at her temple, the way she leaned slightly toward him when she listened. But he did. And once noticed, those details stayed. When their hands met, accidentally, over a pen she reached for, it was nothing dramatic. Just a brush of skin. Yet it felt like the room shifted. The air grew still. Either of them spoke. She withdrew her hand slowly, a quiet movement that carried more weight than words ever could. He saw the smallest tremor in her fingers, and something inside him tightened, that fragile thread between wanting and restraint. "You should probably go," she said, not unkindly. "I know," he replied, though either of them moved. A beat passed. Then another. Finally, she turned back to the window, breaking the spell. "It's late. You'll miss your bus." He stood, his voice lower now. "I'll walk." Her eyes met his one last time, not invitation, not rejection, just a look that held everything unspoken. And then, somewhere down the hall, a door opened. Voices echoed. The ordinary world returned. She glanced away first. He stepped out into the fading light, pulse unsteady, the scent of cedarwood still following him like a memory that refused to fade. He hadn't meant to see her again so soon. But days have a way of folding over themselves when someone stays in your mind too long. She was at the cafe near the old library, the one with slow jazz and chipped cups that made everything feel like memory. He almost turned away when he saw her, sitting alone with her notebook open, a pair of reading glasses slipping down her nose. But she looked up, caught his hesitation, and smiled. "Sit," she said softly, as though she'd been expecting him all along. He did. For a while, they just talked about ordinary things, work deadlines, the weather, a book she couldn't finish. But beneath every word was the same quiet pull, the same awareness they both pretended not to feel. He noticed how she kept her fingers curled around her cup, as if it gave her something to hold onto. And when she laughed, it came out like a sound she hadn't used in a long time, careful, almost surprised. "I used to come here with someone," she said after a pause. "A long time ago. He liked the noise of the street, said it made the silence between us seem smaller." Her tone was even, but her eyes softened with something that wasn't just nostalgia. "Did it?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "No. You can't outtalk silence. He wanted to ask more, who the man was, what had ended, but stopped himself. There was something sacred about her restraint, a kind of dignity that made him tread carefully. Instead, he said, You look different today. She raised an eyebrow. Different how? Lighter, he said, and immediately regretted the word. She tilted her head, studying him. That's dangerous, she murmured. What is? Noticing. A soft laugh escaped him, but it caught in his throat when she leaned in slightly to stir her coffee. Her sleeve brushed his hand, light, unplanned, and his pulse betrayed him. Her breath touched the air near his skin, warm and steady, and for a second, it felt like time paused again. Then she pulled back, eyes lowered, pretending to adjust her ring, the same one she never seemed to remove. The conversation drifted after that, but the silence said enough. When it was time to leave, they walked out together. The evening had turned cold. She drew her shawl closer. He offered to walk her to her car. She almost said no. He saw it in the flicker of hesitation, but then nodded once, quietly. At the curb, she turned to him. You shouldn't get too close, she said gently. People will talk. He tried to smile. Let them. She looked at him for a long moment, something unspoken pressing between them. Then, without thinking, she reached up, just to fix the collar of his coat. Her fingers lingered a second too long, soft against the fabric near his neck. Either of them moved. The street light hummed. Her hand dropped slowly. Good night, she whispered. But her voice trembled, and that was how he knew this wasn't over. It started as an accident, or maybe that's what they told themselves later. She'd forgotten a document at work. He offered to drop it off, saying he'd be nearby anyway. But when she opened the door that evening, barefoot, wrapped in a soft cardigan, there was a moment of silence either could explain away. You didn't have to, she said quietly. I know, he replied. But I wanted to. Her living room smelled faintly of jasmine tea and rain, a calm he hadn't known he'd been missing. Papers were spread across the table. Music played softly in the background, something instrumental, almost sad. He set the folder down, expecting to leave right away. He didn't. Stay a minute, she said. It's still raining. The words were casual, but her voice wasn't. He sat. The sound of rain filled the space between them, gentle, rhythmic, too intimate for strangers and too uncertain for lovers. She poured tea, her hands steady except for the brief tremor when their fingers brushed. Neither mentioned it. So, she said, what will people think if they see you here? He smiled faintly. That you gave me tea. Her eyes flickered, amusement mixed with something heavier. They'd think more. They always do. A silence followed. He could hear his heartbeat, the ticking of a clock, the faint whisper of her breathing. Every small sound felt magnified. Then her phone buzzed, a sharp vibration that made them both flinch. She reached for it, glanced at the screen, and hesitated just long enough for him to notice the name. Work? He asked. She nodded, setting it face down without replying. It can wait. The air shifted again. He didn't know if it was bravery or recklessness that made him speak next. You don't have to keep pretending you don't feel it. Her eyes lifted to his, startled, then softened. That's unfair, she whispered. You're too young to understand what it costs. Maybe, he said, but I still do. She took a slow breath, turning slightly toward him. Her shoulder brushed his. The warmth was immediate, an unspoken truth neither dared to name. Her gaze fell to his mouth, just for a second, and that was enough. He leaned in, not close enough to touch, but close enough to forget to breathe. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Then, a sharp knock at the door. They froze. She stepped back first, hand pressed to her chest, pulse visible at her throat. It's my neighbor, she whispered, almost to herself. He always borrows things. He nodded, moving toward the hallway, pretending calm. She opened the door halfway, spoke briefly, smiled the practiced smile of someone who's used to hiding storms. When she closed it again, her hands were trembling. They said nothing. He turned to leave. She stopped him, just her fingers on his sleeve, light as breath. "You should go," she said softly. "But don't stay away." He met her eyes, the same quiet ache, the same unspoken want. "I couldn't," he said. And for the first time, she didn't tell him to try. They hadn't spoken in days. Not because there was nothing to say, but because saying anything now might unravel everything. She'd stopped replying to his messages after that night. He told himself he understood. He told himself distance was the right thing. But when he saw her across the hallway at work, poised, unreadable, pretending not to look his way, he realized understanding didn't make silence easier. That evening, he found her still there after everyone else had gone. The office lights were dim, the city outside smeared in gold and gray. She was standing by the window again, her reflection caught in the glass, half in shadow, half in memory. He spoke before he could stop himself. "Why do you keep pretending this doesn't matter?" She turned slowly. "Because it can't." Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. One of them brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear, though it didn't need fixing. He took a step closer. "You're not the only one fighting it," he said quietly. "You think it's easy for me?" Her eyes flashed, not anger, exactly, but something raw. "You don't know what it's like to have everything to lose. You can walk away. I can't." He hesitated, then crossed the remaining space between them. "Then tell me to go." "I just did," she whispered. He didn't move. Neither did she. The silence thickened, a fragile thread stretched too tight. He could smell her perfume, faint but familiar, and the warmth of her presence drew him like gravity. "You shouldn't be here," she murmured. "Then stop me," he said, voice low. Her breath caught. His hand lifted, not quite touching her, then brushed a lock of hair from her face. The gesture was simple, tender. But the air around them shifted, alive with the weight of everything they hadn't said. "You don't understand what people will think," she said, eyes glistening. "I don't care what they think," he said. "I care what you do." Her chest rose and fell uneven. She took a single step forward, and that was all it took. The distance vanished. His heart hammered. The scent of rain and jasmine clung to her. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "This is a mistake." "Then why are you shaking?" Her lips parted, a sound caught somewhere between a sigh and his name. She looked up at him, close enough that he could see the reflection of city lights in her eyes, all those tiny, flickering confessions they'd both been too afraid to say out loud. Then, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. They froze, inches apart, breath mingling. She closed her eyes, steadying herself, then stepped back just enough to let the moment break. "Someone's coming," she said, her voice trembling. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. The door handle turned. And right before it opened, she looked at him, a whisper on her lips that was half warning, half confession. "Don't stop." The next morning, everything felt different. Not because of what had happened, but because of what hadn't. She avoided him all day. Every time he passed her office, the door was closed. Her blinds, usually half open, were drawn tight. By afternoon, he told himself to stop thinking about it, to stop waiting for something that was never promised. He was gathering his things when her message appeared on his phone, "Come to my office now." The hallway felt longer than usual. When he entered, she didn't look up right away. Papers were scattered across her desk, too neat for chaos, too messy for calm. Her hand hovered above them like she was still deciding what to say. "Someone saw us," she said finally. The words dropped between them like glass. He froze. "Who?" "It doesn't matter," she said quickly. "What matters is that they're asking questions, about you, about me." Her tone was calm, but her knuckles were white where they gripped the desk. "I can explain. To whom?" she cut in. "To them? To myself?" Her voice cracked then, the first fracture in all her careful restraint. She turned away, facing the window. He could see her reflection, shoulders tight, head bowed slightly, the image of someone who'd been holding herself together for far too long. He stepped closer, but not enough to touch. "Why didn't you just tell me?" he asked softly. "We could have." She turned, suddenly sharp. "Because you don't understand what this could do. My job, my reputation, everything I've worked for gone. You just walk away, but I." She stopped herself, biting back the rest. He felt the sting of it, but deeper still was the ache beneath her fear. "You really think I'd walk away?" Her silence said she didn't know. He moved another step closer, close enough that she could feel the heat of him, close enough that the air between them trembled. "You could have lied," he said quietly. "You could have said it meant nothing." Her eyes lifted to his. "I tried." The confession came out broken, fragile, trembling, honest. For a moment neither of them breathed. She looked at him like she wanted to run and stay at the same time. His hand lifted, hesitated, then fell. "What did you tell them?" he asked. "I said you were just helping me," she whispered. "That there was nothing to talk about." "And do you believe that?" Her throat moved as she swallowed. "I want to." He nodded, a bitter smile forming. "Then tell me again. Maybe I'll believe it too." She turned away, one hand pressed against her desk as though it could steady her. "You should leave before someone sees you here." He didn't move. "Please," she said, her voice barely holding. He finally stepped past her toward the door, brushing close enough that his shoulder grazed hers, light but deliberate. She closed her eyes at the contact, the sound of his footsteps retreating breaking something inside her. Just before he left, he paused. "You can keep pretending," he said softly. "But you already chose." The door clicked shut, and for the first time, she realized he was right. Days passed in uneasy quiet. She kept to her routines, but everything she touched seemed to remind her of him. The chair he used to sit in, the faint echo of laughter that still lived in the air. When the knock finally came, she knew it was him before opening the door. He stood there, rain-soaked, breathing hard, like he'd been walking for miles just to find the courage. "We can't keep doing this," she said before he could speak. "I know," he answered. "That's why I came." The words lingered, soft, steady, inevitable. He stepped inside, the room dim except for the street light filtering through the curtains. Raindrops traced patterns on the window, thunder murmured somewhere distant. The sound made the space feel smaller, more intimate, like the world had narrowed down to just them. She crossed her arms, trying to appear composed. "You shouldn't be here." "Then tell me to go," he said again, echoing that night. Her voice faltered. "I did." "You didn't listen. Because you didn't mean it." Their eyes locked, a quiet standoff filled with everything they'd avoided saying. He took a careful step closer. She didn't move back this time. "I'm tired of pretending," he said. "Of acting like this doesn't matter." Her breath caught. "You think I haven't tried to stop feeling it? You think I haven't told myself 100 times it's wrong?" He shook his head, voice low. "If it's wrong, then why does it hurt so much to stay away?" She looked at him, really looked, and something in her face softened. "Because you remind me what it's like to be seen," she whispered. "And I stopped allowing that a long time ago." He reached up then, his hand hovering near her face, not touching, just waiting. "Then let me," he said quietly. For a heartbeat, the world held still. Her breathing deepened. His hand brushed a strand of wet hair from her cheek, his fingertips trembled with restraint. She didn't pull away. Their closeness wasn't dramatic, no grand gestures, no declarations. Just the soft rhythm of two people standing too near, their words dissolving into silence. The air grew heavy with everything that could happen, and everything they both knew might never. Finally, she spoke, voice barely audible. "If we do this, there's no going back." He swallowed hard. "Then let's not go back." She closed her eyes, exhaling slowly, not surrender, not defeat, but release. When she opened them again, there was no fear left, only understanding. They didn't move closer, not yet. They didn't need to. The truth had already crossed the space between them. For the first time, either of them was pretending. He smiled faintly. So, what happens now? She returned it, quiet but sure. Now we stop lying to ourselves. The thunder rolled again, softer this time, fading into the distance, as if even the storm knew something had changed. The rain had stopped sometime in the night. By morning, everything outside her windows shimmered, streets washed clean, air soft and cool, sunlight trying its best to begin again. She sat at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of tea gone cold. The silence felt different now, not heavy, just waiting. When the knock came, it was gentle this time. She didn't move right away. She only smiled faintly, knowing who it was. He stood in the doorway, uncertain, his hair still damp from the mist outside. There was no grand declaration, no apology. Only that look again, quiet and steady, the kind that held everything words couldn't. I didn't know if you'd want to see me, he said. I did, she replied simply. I just didn't know how to start. He stepped inside, glancing around like the room itself carried memories. The air between them felt fragile but honest, stripped of pretense, bare and human. I've been thinking, he began. About what you said, about not going back. And? She asked softly. He hesitated, then smiled. I don't want to live halfway anymore. Not with you. Something in her face softened at that, the guardedness, the quiet fear. She looked down for a moment, then reached across the table, fingers brushing his hand before resting there fully. Her touch was small, but it said everything. I've spent years keeping people at a distance, she whispered. Afraid of what it would cost to care again. But I'm more afraid now of what it costs not to. He turned his hand over, their fingers intertwining naturally, like it had been waiting to happen. The room seemed to breathe with them, the hum of the refrigerator, the slow ticking of the wall clock, the sunlight moving across their faces. No rush, no need to define it. Just presence. I don't care about the age, he said quietly. It's never been about that. I know, she said. But people will still see it that way. Then let them, he replied with a small laugh. We'll give them something real to talk about. She smiled, a full, unguarded smile, the kind he hadn't seen before. He stood, moving to her side. For a long second, they just stood there in the soft light, close enough that he could feel her heartbeat through the silence. When he reached up, it wasn't a kiss he gave her. It was gentler, a slow, careful touch of his forehead against hers. A promise made without words. Her eyes closed, her breath steadying against his. We'll figure it out, she murmured. We will, he said. Together. Outside, a car passed, a dog barked, life went on. But in that quiet kitchen, time seemed to hold its breath, just long enough for two people to finally stop running from what they already knew. She squeezed his hand once, firm and sure. Stay, she whispered. He did. And in the stillness that followed, there was no more pretending, only the gentle rhythm of two hearts finding home.